Recording started. Yep.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I am Lisa Tchaikovsky with Seven Story Publishing, and I'm here today with Richard Caldwell. How are you doing today, Richard?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Lisa. How are you?
I am doing great. Can you tell us about yourself? What do you like to do outside of writing? What is a day in the life like for you?
Well, I'm retired. I've had multiple careers in my life, and the last one was in real estate. And I'm still technically a broker. I kept my license active. You never know when I might need it. But anyway, the most of my life has been in, believe it or not, technical engineering jobs. So I'm used to television technology, but computer technology leaves me cold. So what do I do during the day? I write at odd times. I might get up, like this morning, I got up at 5 o'clock and wrote for a little bit and fiddled around with Instagram and discovered I'd actually created 2 accounts by accident. So I had to go back and figure out what was going on with that. But anyway, what I do outside of writing is I collect and paint military miniatures and play war games. So normally I like to play in the Napoleonic period. That's my favorite, and was the background to my first book.
Amazing. Can you actually tell us what inspired it? That was the background for it. So what inspired your first novel?
Well, there are two aspects to it. One, I love Napoleonic history. I've been studying it since 1970, a long time, 50 plus years. And I really enjoy it, the details in there, but there's a lot of gaps. And those gaps create opportunities for stories. And so I started writing The Empress's Escape. And it was more going to be kind of an action adventure type story. But I had him meet up with the Empress, and it was way down the line. It was too far in to be a romance story because it's not following the romance trope that I learned after the fact. But anyway, she's in a chateau by herself. He walks in, he looks really dashing in his Austrian heavy cavalry uniform and so on and so forth. And he's pretty well off. It's a tailored uniform. So he looks pretty sharp. Imagine Chris Hemsworth.
Oh, wow.
Okay, that's
Really?
look. All right. And her look is, I don't know if you know her or not, but Italia Ricci, the actress.
Absolutely.
Okay? So that gives you a visualization of what they look like. Anyway, she's been there on her own. There's a couple of footmen, nobody to answer the door. He arrives in the middle of pouring rain, opens the door to this chateau, and she's standing at the far end of the hall in the darkness with a gun. And she's trying to protect herself because we're at closing stages of the Napoleonic Wars, and chaos is a lot of roaming soldiers out there roaming around, looting and burning, so on and so forth. So she she puts on a brave face and goes up to him with the cocked gun, gets his attention, and he's sort of like, okay, fine, I'll put my hands up and surrender. But he drops that. He's not really afraid of her, and she's standing there by the light of a candelabra and says, who are you? Where are you from? And she knows right away with the uniform. He's an Austrian officer. And she is so relieved that he's there to rescue her that she rushes up, puts her hands on his cheek, and kisses him.
Oh, wow.
Reaction. And he's completely taken aback by this. And she steps back and says, whoops, I shouldn't have done that. But, I really enjoyed that. And so you have this spark created in that instant, and he walks, he talks to her for a little while and so on, gives her a message from the Emperor of Austria. She reads it and burns it, so he doesn't know what's in the message. And so she says, we're going to act like husband and wife, and that's how we're going to work our way across France, Germany, to get to Austria. He says, well, okay, fair enough, we'll do that. And because he really didn't have a plan, he's not a spy or anything like that. He doesn't know all this kind of stuff. He just knows, he's been selected by a friend of his because he's a capable officer. He's resourceful. He will get her there, even if it costs him his life. He'll do it.
Oh my goodness.
So they're off on the trail. They're heading towards Germany, and she starts to ask questions about him because she likes him. She's drawn to him. She has her son with her, and the protagonist Blaine starts to form an attachment with the boy who's 4 years old. And so the there's a little bit of a play there. She's trying to maintain control. He's trying to maintain control because he's responsible for her safety. And so there's a little bit of tension there. And she puts him in a spot right at the beginning saying, I'm a higher rank, you will obey me. And not in so many words, but he gets the idea of it. So he says, she's going to be trouble because she behaves in an imperious manner. And so, can't go into an inn when she's, head held behind, nose in the air sort of thing. Like she's, royalty, which she is, and he's a lowly officer. So there's going to be problems. And so that's how the story gets going. And there's a bad guy who used to be Blaine's best friend, who is now a traitor in French service, who is chasing them. And he's out for revenge on Blaine. And it reaches a crisis on the steps of the Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna, where they fight a duel to the death.
Oh, that sounds very interesting.
So, and it's published. That was a major exercise in itself. It's on Amazon.
Is that your first book?
That's my first one that I've published. Yes.
Congrats on publishing. That is a huge feat in itself. And I know self-publishing is not easy.
Well, the Amazon platform is not the easiest in the world to navigate. Because you're like, I found out quite by chance that when you publish a hard copy version, it doesn't check the formatting and so on. If you do an ebook first, it does all that. And if you do link the two, then you can transfer it. But your ebook version is slightly different from your paperback version because you've now got the backstory, the back cover information.
Yeah.
So anyway, it was very tough all the way through. I don't think I'm going to go that way as next time around.
But you're published, and that's the amazing thing. How did you come up with these characters? And were they spontaneous, or are they really based on characters from Napoleon's history?
There are characters from Napoleon's history who interact with the fictional characters. So I don't know if you remember Daniel Craig playing James Bond talking to the Queen. He's playing a fictional character talking to a real person. And so he was a little bit confused with this. But in this story, there are gaps in the telling that create an opportunity. So I have Ewan Blaine, he's the son of a Scottish warrior who escaped the clearing of the Highlands of Scotland. I'm from Scotland originally, so that's part of my background.
That's amazing.
So anyway, the only thing he has as a relic from his father is his claymore sword. He wears that instead of his regulation heavy cavalry sword. So Blaine actually is created from thinking about what my character wanted to be, where I wanted him to go in his arc. And he enters the arc partway through because there is a prequel that I'm working on, which takes us up to this point. So he's got a lot of baggage that he has to deal with. And from there, he's going to, the Empress is going to end up defending him towards the end of the journey. That's I don't want to give away too much if anybody's interested in it. But there is an HEA. So it's way more than Blaine expects. But anyway, the character himself, I researched the names. Blaine is a Scottish name. Ewan's a Scottish name. The characters of his friends are actually my own friends. They agreed to have their names used, and I did a little changes. And and their first name is different, but I used their personalities to make the characters come to life. Because this is my first time actually working on this, and I was learning as I was doing the writing and going, this is terrible. I need to tear this out, redo it, tear it out. So, I ripped out about 4 or 5 chapters from the book, and I'm reusing that material, the basic story, for the prequel. So anyway, it was a tortuous experience. I was with what do you call it, critique group, and they were just pulling their hair out, like, oh my gosh, so many books, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. So it was actually creating anxiety for me being in the group. So I said, we're done. But I have a neighbor who lives about 20 miles away from me, who is an author as well, and she is my a writing cheerleader, if you like. And she puts up with all my times of saying, I'm not going to do this anymore, I've had enough. But she's been very helpful. She's on her 4th book. She's a great lady. So
amazing.
So anyway, the characters are all researched. The historical characters are researched, what they looked like and so on, so that that detail is included in the story. And in the original version of it, I had way too much detail. I was like describing what they looked like in a portrait instead of being more realistic about it. So it was the first book was a learning experience. My second one, which I'm doing some revisions right now, is quite different. It is what I would call a romantic thriller.
Oh, okay.
In current period, and it's done in first-person POV, which was interesting to write. I actually enjoyed writing it that way. So the characters in there are quite different. But again, based on people I know, people's mannerisms, behavior, and so on. And it was based on a job that I actually did for 10 years. So,
wow.
So I'm aware of the technology. So that's another thing I'm working on. And the third story is going to be the prequel to The Empress Escape. And that's going to be the early version of Blaine. But I'm using the Jenny Nash template to build that story. And I think that's going to work for me. I believe that style is going to work.
Is it easier since you've got the information from your first book that you pulled out the chapters? Is that making it easier to write the prequel?
Yes and no, because the basic concept is good, but I have to restructure it to make it what it should be, not amateur hour, to be more professional. Put it that way. I've learned a lot in 2 years, Lisa, and it's been what I would call a very steep learning curve. And I now understand just how much I don't know.
I understand that completely. I feel like as authors, you learn from each book you write, and there's a whole huge author community out there. I think you were right to leave the critique group because this is your story, your passion. It should be from your heart, not opinions of other people.
Right.
And I love that you have a neighbor who is your cheerleader too, because that's super important as well.
Right. I did have an experience with book coaching, which was very negative. The book coach wanted me to write a book that suited their style and their interest. So that's not me.
Nope.
I want you to, Lisa, I want you to sit on the beach with a pina colada dripping on the pages, and you're just having fun, relaxing in the sun. You can put it down, pick it up the next time you go out sunbathe or whatever. That's what I want to write, because I just want to write something that's escapist, people have fun with and enjoy.
And you painted such a picture in my mind. It is actually the type of genre I would read. So I'm going to go look it up after this because it does. Like, you painted such an amazing picture of it. That was awesome. And it sounds like that type of book, like a beach read, that would be amazing that you can't put down too.
Okay. So definitely the second one, which is called Fletcher's Pursuit, is a friend of mine read it, who was a very, what I would call, literary type of writer. Extraordinarily good writer. He said, I missed appointments. I just sat there and read it from beginning to end. I just would not put it down. I wanted to know how it turned out. So, and that was on the draft. So it's been through Tristy Pinkston's my editor. She did the dev and line edit, picked up a lot of stuff. And we talked after the edit was done, and she said, "What about this? What about that?" I was like, "Oh, great! These are good ideas." So I'm now heavily into the revision process. I'm having fun with it.
That's all that really matters, is the fact that you're having fun with it. That's what writing should really be. It should be something you enjoy. It shouldn't feel like a job, you know?
Right.
And what you're writing, is that the type of genre you like to read as well when you read books?
Yes, I do. One of my favorite books was Losing Julia by Jonathan Hull. That's just a very poignant story.
Uh-huh.
And it's a love story, as it's in time after war, but it's in he has flashbacks into the First World War and so on, and the death of his friend. And he's an old man like me in a nursing home. I'm not in a nursing home yet, but getting close to it. But he's he has a little sticky in his pocket. This the first thing he reads is fly, and he says, "Damn, I forgot to zip up his fly." That sort of thing. It's but it's very touching when he loses his friends as they die. But he has these rapid flashbacks into the war. But Jonathan's a very skillful writer, and in the space of a sentence, he could create an image of soldiers in the trenches, and they're telling a story, and in the background is the sound of guns. And so you immediately are transformed just in one sentence to where they are. So I just love that story. It just really appealed to me. So
That's amazing. So I want to talk a little more about your own book. You talked about a format that you were using to write your second book. Can you tell us about your process with writing that and the format
the
you were using?
okay, so the second book, as an engineer by training, I
Uh-huh.
plan everything. So I went through all the chapters and so on, detailed what would be in each chapter. I tend to write short rather than long because I was taught in school, the scientific way of writing is be brief, be specific, move on, instead of being
Mhm.
flowery. If I wrote too much, it'd be flowery. So I've got to slow down and expand on what happens in that story. And it's formatted as a romance as opposed to a thriller. So it's the romance element is up front,
Uh-huh.
with Graham Fletcher and Carolina Munoz, who work in the same organization.
Uh-huh.
Um, Graham's, a British guy who's spends too much time moping over his ex-girlfriend, drinking too much, and so on, until he steps into this elevator in chapter 1, and this lady backs into him, and he's trying to read something, and her long black hair brushes across
Uh-huh.
the the folder he's trying to read, and he just moves it out of the way, and he's like, "Wow!" And then her perfume reaches his nostrils, and he's going like, "Oh, wow." And so he leans forward. Of course, in his elevator is pretty crowded at this point. He leans forward and said, "Boy, I really love that perfume." And it get all these stares like, "How gauche can you be? Politically incorrect, error. So he's like, "Oops, what have I done?" And she said, "I'm glad you like it." So at that point, it's a little bit of tension there. He's completely forgotten where he's going. He's going to a sales meeting, but she just completely captures him at that point. He just can't think of anything else. They're formally introduced when they come off the elevator. He just can't keep his eyes off her. She's gorgeous. He says, "Why didn't I see this person before?" And she says, "Come sit next to me in a sales meeting." Well, like he just follows along like a puppy dog, and she's
Oh.
got him in tow. So he's trying to figure out, how can I be so lucky? I'm not good looking, but nobody's, no woman's come near me in 2 years. It's kind of lonely and so on and so forth. And this gorgeous lady's not paying attention to him. So, but you have to find out what's going on.
Yeah, you gotta
Story.
read the book. Oh
Right.
my goodness, that is super exciting. Now that you're on to book 2 that you're writing, what does being a successful writer and author look like to you? What does that mean for you?
For me, well, apart from having sales, which would be nice, the 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 notion would be that the people would enjoy the story. If they came back to me and just said, "Hey, this was fun, I enjoyed it," I'm satisfied. I don't
That's
want to be
amazing.
I don't want to be New York Times bestseller, things like that. There's too much pressure associated with that, book signings, all that kind of stuff. I don't want that. I like to lead a simple life. I just want people to have a story they can enjoy, and just have a good time. That's all I'm looking to provide. Entertainment.
I think
Let me give you a little bit of a clue what that comes from, Lisa. My
that's so-
father used to be a movie theater manager when I was a kid
oh my
in
gosh.
Scotland. So every Monday night we sat down in front of in the theater and watched the silver screen, and whatever the stories were, romance stories, film noir, didn't matter what it was. I was just soaking it up. The Hollywood Dream Factory had a huge influence on my style of writing, my thinking, because I think cinematically as opposed to any other way in terms of writing scenes.
What is your favorite thing about being a writer and author?
I suppose it's a kind of form of megalomania if you think about it. The sweep of your pen, you can create a world, and with the press of a delete key, you can destroy it.
Mhm.
So it's I wrote a little poem about that,
Oh,
about the effects of having this absolute power over this world that you create and the people you create. But I actually like the characters, the good guys and the bad guys. Bad guys are much easier to write than good guys.
really? How
Yeah,
come?
because they're more powerful in their emotions. They're they can be really detestable, and then at an odd moment show a sign of humanity, even if it's only for a second or two. But it's they're easier to write than the hero who is brooding and moping, and you're trying to get to the bottom of why he's behaving this way.
Uh-huh.
And the Empress, for example, gets really frustrated with the protagonist because he won't open up, and
Um,
she's like, trying to, she's trying to entice him to interact with her, and he's trying to be straight laced and behave himself, and it's just, she just like rolls her eyes like, drive me crazy. So anyway, I want people to enjoy it. It's fun to write characters like that. Um, I like them to be living, breathing people. One friend of mine suggested an exercise where I actually talk to my protagonist from my time to his time, which was really bizarre if you think about it.
That's
And
interesting.
so I was typing on the pages, and he was reading the pages I was typing. That was how we we're communicating with each other. And he called in Elizabeth, this character, to come and see this and see what I was doing. And it's like, where is this guy? I don't know to explain what's going on, but it was an interesting exercise. But we were talking like that. So it was, and that gave me an idea for another story, which I'm researching about fantasy and time travel. So,
That's awesome. That's going to be really interesting to do something with time travel.
so um, I've got the basics of the mechanics of what he has to do, but the hero has great difficulty getting to this person that he knew 200 years before.
Oh, wow.
In the opening scene, he wakes up in a cold sweat.
Uh-huh.
He's got PTSD, and he's in Paris. He's a French soldier. He wakes up and he finds a silk handkerchief in his hand that's scented with lavender. It is looks brand new. He takes it to an antique shop who says, "I'll buy it from you, 10,000 euros." He says, "No, I'm holding on to this." He says, "Why is it so valuable?" Because it's in mint condition. It is over 200 years old.
Wow.
So,
That sounds really interesting.
so that's the starting premise, and he's got to find this person, and it revolves around a poem called
Uh-huh.
"Plaisir d'amour," and that was written in the again Napoleonic period before Napoleon became emperor, but it's on the basis of that story.
That's incredible. Since you mentioned watching movies from the time you were a kid, did you always want to be a writer and publish and be an author since you were a kid?
I wrote stories when I was in high school. My first full-length novel was handwritten. I
Oh,
still
wow.
have it.
That's
I
amazing.
had 88,000 words, and it's all my handwriting from when I was 14 or 15, thereabouts.
Wow, that's incredible. You were that young.
So I wrote that. Um, of course, that never went anywhere. That was just something I wanted to do. And then I've done some nonfiction work in terms of engineering handbooks. I did that in
Wow.
the early 80s, but I stayed off writing until just a couple of 3 years ago, probably 3 years ago, when the spark started about the story with the Empress and so on, and have thought, did a lot of research on what regiments were where and when, what battles were they involved in, so that the hero's regiment was systematically portrayed as a real regiment, and the battles he was involved in were real, and the events in the battles were real, and the pieces all fell into place. So I
I
enjoyed the research. It was fun, a lot of fun.
That's awesome, and I love hearing that you really enjoyed writing too, because anything that you do for work, there's gonna have the frustrating moments, but the fact that the good ones and the positive ones outweigh that, it really says a lot, and that's inspiring to other people too, because you've had this incredible career and you've done multiple things, and now you're chasing another passion and career, and I think that's incredible too.
Thank you. So the one of the things I consider myself very fortunate, I've had an opportunity in various careers to do a lot of international travel.
Oh, that's
So,
awesome. Lots of inspiration.
so I've had uh, worked with staff who were Hispanic, so I understand how they think of, one person was Spanish, the other in my group were Hispanic, and the Spanish lady would swear like a trooper, and the others would cover their ears and say bad words, bad words. They hated it. They
Yeah.
didn't like that at all. They were very genteel people, very sweet. Loved working with them. And also on my staff were people. One person was an Arab gentleman from Mauritania, and he told me once, like business is business. Well, that's a cliche, but when he explained it in his
Mhm.
way of thinking, it was quite different. He says, okay, business is business, but that doesn't mean they don't like what you suggested. It will come back to it at a different point in time. So it's a circular way of thinking about it. And I thought, oh, okay, all right. Having been brought up in Britain and
Yeah.
then being an American citizen from '84,
Uh-huh.
um, it's um, it's a different way of thinking, and that was an
Yeah.
eye opener. I learned a lot from that multicultural environment, so it was very good.
I think that's amazing. I think that's really important too. And we're coming up on our last couple of minutes. Richard,
Oh, I'm having so much fun here.
I know we're having an amazing time. Your books sound incredible. Is there any social media you'd like to tell us about so people can come follow you or where they can find your books?
Well, I'm on. I finally figured out what was going on with Instagram. I had inadvertently opened two accounts, so I do have one. I can send you the handle information
That'd be
uh,
perfect.
so that I think that's the right term, isn't it? For Instagram, I've been experimenting with that. I haven't put a lot on there yet. I only opened it up a couple of days ago, and then figured out what was going wrong. Why was I do something in my profile, but it wasn't over here. Why isn't it over here? When I opened up my phone, I realized I have two separate accounts, and that was craziness. So I kept one, got rid of the other one, and trying to straighten it out. So I will be working on that. And if people want to contact me, I'll give you my email address as well, and they can write to me directly. Happy to do that. I don't have a website per se. I've looked into that. Did not have a very good experience with one company because they kept saying, "Oh, now you're into a different bracket. You want to add this and this and this." And
Oh,
wait a minute, I thought I was paying a fixed rate per month, but no, it didn't work out that way. So I haven't ventured back into that. But I'm going to start off small. I'll start off with Instagram, talk to people who are interested. If they want to tell me about their experience with the book, what they liked, what they didn't like, I'll learn from that.
I think that's amazing. I'll get all that from you if you want to email it to me afterwards. I can get that
Absolutely.
posted. And Richard Caldwell, you are awesome. Thank you so much for your
Thank
amazing
you so
book
much.
and
Appreciate
for
it.
being here. And I'm so excited to see more of them.
So I will look forward to talking to you again, Lisa. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.